Hey everybody, today I'll be taking a look at The Fog: Escape from Paradise. So this is a board game due to be launched on Kickstarter on March the 8th, 2022. I was asked to review and preview this by Zolox Games, and to be honest, full disclosure, I was offered payment to do so. However, I did refuse that payment on the condition that I could give my genuine thoughts, because integrity is very important to me and I wanted you as a viewer to trust my opinion. So these are my genuine thoughts on the game. So this one accommodates 1 to 4 players and takes around 45 to 80 minutes to play. Now this is going to be the retail-esque version of the game. However, there will be a deluxe version of the game which will have a wider player count, accommodating 1 to 6 players, and of course the time of the game being altered because of that. So the setup is going to look like this. We've got the main board here consisting of this sea area with 3 boats on these docks in 3 different colours. You've got the main beach area, which is where most of the gameplay takes place, with these islanders and obstacles scattered semi-randomly throughout, and they're going to come in 3 different colours. You've got blue islanders, you've got red islanders, and you've got green islanders. However, those don't associate to a particular player because you can control any of those particular colours, depending on a draft, which we'll discuss a little bit later. You've got the turn order board here that looks like this. And this is going to change depending on the player count. So this is for 3 players, where it's going to go yellow player is going to take their turn, then the blue player, then the pink player, then the pink player again, and then the yellow player, and then the blue player again. And as you can see in certain points in this track, you're going to trigger the fog moving, which is one of the main mechanisms in the game. Each player is going to have their own little kind of action tracker here, which shows how many actions you have left on your turn, because each turn consists of 7 action points, and you can spend them as you see fit. And also each player is going to have their own little player reference here to show all the different moves you can make. Along the track, or along the edge of the board here, you've got the fog marker, which is going to keep encroaching on the island as it goes through, potentially engulfing people as you go and losing the controlling player victory points, which we'll discuss a bit later. And also you've got this score marker along this side of the board. So I think the best way to understand this game is to start with the scoring to understand how that works. So there's going to be 4 different things that score in the game and to decide who the winner is going to be. The first of which is getting the correct coloured people onto the correct boats in their particular slot. So you can see here, this blue chap here has a spot reserved for him on the blue boat right here, like so. And if he's on that correct boat, then you get an additional 4 points for each person, doing that. However, it doesn't mean that you can't put people on the other boat. It just means that you're going to get those bonus 4 points if you get them on the correct boat. You're additionally going to get points based on the different areas they're in, because you can see each of these boats consist of different rows here. So you've got the top row, and anybody of yours in that particular row at the end of the game is going to get 7 points. Or this is going to change depending on how they are flipped during the setup. This section is going to get 6 points for each of your people there. This person is going to get 4, or this row is going to get 4 points, and the bottom bit here at the stern of the ship is going to get 2 points for each person on there. Usually you can only have 1 person on each spot. However, there are a few exceptions, and the stern at the back of the boat here, you can have 3, 2 or 3 people on those particular spots. Just scoring negative points is also a big factor in the game, and kind of links to the main theme of the game, because as the game develops, this fog is going to start engulfing people on the board, and anybody who's captured by that fog, as in being overlapped, are going to potentially lose points for you depending on how far they are up on the beach. So if they get caught right at the back here, you're going to score negative 9 points for each of those. But if you make it quite far but still get engulfed, then you can lose, -3 or -2 points. You are really incentivized to push your people as far up as you can. So before any gameplay actually takes place, you're going to partake in a draft to claim these different villagers and put your particular coloured disc around that tile. So you can see here that in turn we've, the yellow player's chosen one, then the black's chosen one, and then the pink player's chosen one, and so on until all the different villagers are claimed with a particular colour. Now you might say, oh, why don't I pick all the ones at the front? Well, yeah, generally you might do because they haven't got much distance to travel to the boats, but inevitably they're going to get gobbled up by the other players. And additionally, you might want to get these particular villagers, like with these icons here, with the old man here, and also the Queen Lady, which looks like this, because the best spots on the boat are reserved for those particular characters. And these characters here are a lot more common, but they are able to score fewer points. So that's probably why you might want to take some other characters and kind of sit further back on the beach. You can also see that each of these characters has a symbol at the bottom, which basically dictates the strengths these characters have when executing a particular maneuver. So there's a bunch of different maneuvers you can make throughout the game, and each of them takes a different amount of action points, or some take the same. But so whenever you execute a move, you're going to move this track down depending on the amount of action points you use, and your turn is going to end when you use all 7 of them. So let's talk about all the different action points. So the first one is going to be a simple maneuver where you just move one spot to the next, like so, and that's going to take 1 action point to do so. And that is the only move you can use to move back along the beach. All the other ones you have to move either sideways or towards the ocean. The second action is to push, and when you push someone, you are basically can move up to 2 people with an action. So let's just say this character wanted to push these 2. You can go like this and shift them along and create new opportunities, and just even push your own people towards the boats, which is a good maneuver to make. The other one is going to be squeeze, which is going to take 4 action points, where you can squeeze between 2 characters or between an obstacle and a character. For example, this lady here might want to get into this spot, and she can squeeze between this rock and this person to go onto this side here. Again, that's going to take 4 action points. Another one is to flip or switch your spot with somebody else, which costs 3 action points. So for example, I could just go like this. Very simple maneuver. Another one is to jump over another character. So I could go like this, there to there, and that is going to cost 3 action points. Another one is to jump over one of the obstacles, which is going to cost 4 action points. So for example, this guy might want to jump over that rock like so. And that's pretty much all the actions you can take. But the relevance of these symbols is because if the particular action is on that character, like this one's got the climb over obstacle one, that action is only going to cost 2 action points for that particular character, meaning that it's a lot more efficient and they have that strength to navigate the map in a particular way. Some other characters also have a 3 on them that look like this, which means that any action that would cost more than 3 only costs that character 3. And some of them also have this +1 on them, which means that once you use or move that character, then they're going to get an extra movement point. Also, when you get to the water area, you can only ever execute the move action or the switch action. However, when you do get to this water area, there are different ways you can venture. For example, you can go straight into the stern of the ship like so, or you can start moving down these piers and moving like this to get to their particular spots. And that is essentially how the game plays out. You're just going to keep taking 7 actions in turn order, sometimes getting back-to-back moves. And whenever you cross this section here, the fog is going to move to the next spot and potentially just engulf the next row of characters, and hopefully with the intention of moving your characters out the way, getting onto the ships to get the most victory points. However, there are some big twists on this game, which I'll talk about now. So you might have noticed from the little explanation there is 0 luck in this game. Everything is on the board, it's completely transparent, you know the action points you can take, and again, there's no luck factor, no dice, no randomness, no anything like that. So it can be a very meticulous and even analysis paralysis prone game if you want to min-max and optimize every single move. However, a variant on the game, which I highly recommend, and I would never ever try even to play this without this, is to use sand timers to take your turn. So you have this amount of time in order to perform your 7 actions, which adds to the franticness of the nature of the game, because this is supposed to be a game where we're in a frantic rush to get away from the fog, and taking a more methodical approach by not using the sand timers just kind of eliminates that tension. But adding these sand timers just ramps up the excitement by tenfold, and it really does add to the feel and that chaos of the game, which it really works. And it also leaves you that leeway to make mistakes. And I think making mistakes in this kind of situation is what makes the game more exciting, because if you can very carefully map things out, again, just very methodically move things optimally as you can, it just brings the game to a bit of a standstill. But by using those timers, that is completely eliminated. And it's not necessarily a real-time game. It just acts more like a chess timer, really, just to stop you from getting that AP prone and to stop people from completely min-maxing each movement. So that being said, let's go into my thoughts on the game. So first off, meaningful decisions. Does this game have meaningful decisions? Absolutely it does. There are so many things you need to consider. So number one, you've always got that threat of the fog coming on, of course, and these can really lose you a lot of points if you do not move the people at the back forward. And sometimes these horrible bottlenecks will happen where your people at the back just cannot move. You cannot budge from where you are because there's so much congestion in the middle of the board. And normally stuff like that will be a bit frustrating for me because you are essentially powerless to do anything about it. But it really does come through in an exciting way, this one, when you've got that horrible pressure coming from behind you where everybody wants to move really, but bottlenecks create and start backing things up and you can't really do much. But additionally, you really want to move your people at the front forward because you're going to get these bonus points by getting onto those boats quicker and getting the right people into the right spot because only one person could go on each spot. So everything is very, it's tight here. You need to get into those spots before the other people do because the opportunities are going to quickly dwindle away. So there is that really cool tension of getting the right people on the right boat, people on the boats quicker, but still avoiding the fog and also utilising the abilities of all the different characters. Because, 7 action points isn't a lot, and, getting those extra a point or two leeway by using the character's abilities can go a long way if you're utilising them correctly. So there is a lot to mull over here, and once you're put under that pressure of the sand timer, I get that excitement comes through, but still, mixed with a good abstract style game. So a very weird balance because, normally abstract games are not entirely for me. I find them a bit too rigid, but that extra element of the time pressure and all the variation of the movement and the way that merges with the theme of the game and the setting just works so well. Now, something I was in two minds about when reading the rules was the drafting system. I thought it doesn't really feel right for the game. It doesn't really, add much, and surely there's another way that you can set up the game in a balanced fashion and get it done nice and quickly. However, I will completely transparently say that I was wrong. I think the draft is really exciting and is quite a cool part of the game, and it only takes a couple of minutes, so literally you're going to get into the fun part and into the crux of the game quite rapidly. But I do like some of the decisions you have to make when drafting because, of course, the front row character is going to be great because they haven't got very far to move to their boats. But sometimes the more powerful characters, the queen characters and the old elder character here, they have the best seats reserved for them, so therefore they can potentially offer more points if you can pull off that move and get them to their right ship. Additionally, because some of the moves work with each other, in terms of like the switcheroony or the pushing ability, then lining up characters next to each other can be quite a cool decision to make because you can just push people along and move several of your characters with one maneuver. So yeah, the actual drafting part I actually enjoyed, which I didn't think I would. Now, something you don't see regularly in board games nowadays is the action point system. So a lot of my favourite games actually use this system, games such as Mexica and Torres, great Kramer and Kiesling classics. I haven't seen this mechanism used in many, many years, and I'd like to see a resurgence of it, and this game actually uses it really well, merged with an abstract kind of manoeuvring game. Now, the time investment of this game is really good, providing that you play with the sand timers, which again, I want to stress, I will always play with those sand timers. I think without it, there's too much scope for analysis paralysis, and it will completely detach you from the excitement of the game, of that fog encroaching. So I think, if you're always playing with sand timers, you cannot just sit down and mull over your turns, and you're easily going to get this played in that 45-minute mark, which is a spot on for me. And that kind of goes into the scalability of the game as well. I always would play this with probably no more than 4 players. I know the base game here only goes up to 1 to 4, but with the deluxe version, I think there is the option to go up to 6. I can't really imagine playing it that way. And even in the 2-player game, you actually take control of 2 nations, and I think only your lowest of the 2 scores. And that for me feels a bit too much for the simplicity of the game. So for me, the sweet spot is really 3 or 4 players, particularly the 3. I think it works exceptionally well. There is a good degree of player interaction here because of the the scarcity of the spots on the boat. There is that frantic rush to get to them and that tense angst to get to those seats. But additionally, I like the kind of passive fallout of your positioning of your people, because when we played this last night, I had all my people kind of sat in the neck of the beach here, and I kind of drafted consciously that way, where all the people behind me were just kind of stuck and couldn't move through me. And I just thought, what, I'm quite safe. I'll just sit here for a while the fog keeps on encroaching. So that was quite cool that you can actually maneuver yourself that way. And yeah, it's a bit cutthroat, but that's part of the fun, really. But yeah, I do like the way that you can constantly just push people passively. Sometimes you might get a little bonus move because someone wants to move you out of the way or switching you around. And again, that race to get to those spots really does come through, and that is all embedded in the player interaction. It's quite difficult for me to comment on the production of the game because this is a retail copy, sorry, a review copy, and I don't know how that's going to compare to the retail copy or the deluxe copy, but the graphic design and stuff is absolutely fine. One big issue is the colorblind issue, because the red and the green tiles, I can barely differentiate them. I'm colorblind myself, so hopefully they'll put a symbol or something on them just to help the people play that, and I'm well aware that the design team are aware of that, so hopefully that will be fixed relatively soon by the time the campaign launches. But yeah, everything else is fine. It's nice and clear. I will say that the player aids are a little bit busy and could probably do with a little bit of cleaning up, but generally I think once you've got those moves memorised, it's not going to be too much of an issue. There is also some effort being made in terms of the replayability. Generally the setup is going to change each time because these are, again, semi-randomly put out, which is going to change the drafting order and change how you approach the game. However, it is going to feel quite a similar game every time because these boats are rigid on the board, these aren't modular, and I think one of the stretch goals is going to be to create modular boats to change that setup just slightly to add a bit more life into the game. So I think that's a welcome addition. There are also some variations of the games that you can choose to play if you want to. For example, sometimes you can, or if you want to choose these options, you can have require a certain amount of workers on these boats before they can ship off and get those points. So it adds a bit more tension that way, and you have to kind of communally work with each other. Another one is you have to get the leaders off the island for that to score. Or so there's different kind of options you can choose to play with. However, for me, I think that will start to take away from the simplicity of the game, and I quite like it as it is because this isn't a terribly complex game. It does walk that kind of gateway plus level, and when you start adding stuff like that to add to the bloat and things, it starts to kind of deter me personally a bit. Now I know a lot of people do like that variation and just like having that option to pull out and add an extra module or two or add an extra rule or two. But I can't personally see myself ever using that, with the exception of the sand timers. Additionally, there are some maneuvers you can change by using these enhanced ones, which add even more complexity to the maneuvers. And again, I don't think that's necessary. I think there's enough you can do, enough to play with the simple actions. So, final thoughts on the Fog Escape from Paradise. Now, I have to say straight up, I really enjoyed this game, even way more than I was expecting, to be honest. Normally, I'm not a huge fan of abstract games, but for me, this one just works. Merged with the action selection system here, or the action point allowance. Really nice to see a resurgence of this. Again, a lot of my favourite games use it, and it's really good to see again. Now, I will say again, I want to stress I'll always play with the sand timers. I think it's a completely essential part of the game, and again, I would never even consider playing without it. Weirdly enough, this game managed to really execute that fear and that tension of wanting to move things along. You have contrasting kind of incentives. I want to get my people onto the ship because I want to get them in the right place, and I also want to get these bonus tokens. But at the same time, if I'm losing the people at the back, then I'm going to lose a lot of points if I neglect them. And balancing the two is where it really lies, and utilising those manoeuvres as much as possible under the time pressure is just a really exciting merge of mechanisms and a really kind of emotive game, really, because I'm not a thematic gamer. I generally am not interested in theme. I'm purely mechanical. This one, the theme actually hooked me. I thought it really worked well, and it pulled off what it was intending to. So I really think this is a niche. I haven't got any game like this in my collection, and I'm all in, basically. I'm happy to play it, and I enjoyed the game a lot, and the other people I played it with enjoyed it even more than I did. So it's been a unanimous hit, and that's normally not the case. So yeah, it's a really cool game, very unique, and one that I recommend checking out once it hits Kickstarter and even beyond that. So again, the Kickstarter does launch on the 8th of March or around that time, if it's changed. And check it out because I think everybody can get something out of this one. Again, I want to stress that I was not paid to make this review. Okay, these are my genuine thoughts, and I did refuse payment. So please don't think I've had my pockets lined, because it's not the case. So yeah, that's it really. This one's going to get my shield of quality. I'm more than happy to do that because it is a really enjoyable experience. That is The Fog Escape from Paradise.